All right. Hi, everybody. This is week 12. Can you believe that we have 8 weeks left of school? I cannot believe that. And this is day 1. All right. So this week we are looking at free speech, cancel culture, kind of that whole thing, and stuff. So that will kind of be the topic of the week. I did see this really cool, you guys, I haven't been with you guys that long. I think we've been together, what, about 6 weeks now or so? And stuff. But one of the things I love reels and stuff like that. So I usually share reels with my other classes, things I find that I think are funny. So this one I saw last night and I laughed out loud, and maybe you can relate. Maybe you've seen your teacher in this position before. Okay. So I'll just share it with you really quick. I think it's pretty funny. So here, let me unmute it.
There's a camera on you, baby.
There's a camera on me right
back behind you.
Oh, hello, praise the Lord. I'm gonna bust you inside your head. What?
There's a camera on you, baby.
There's a camera on me right
back behind you.
I'm guilty.
Oh, hello, praise the Lord. I'm gonna bust you inside your head. What?
There's a camera on you, baby.
There's a camera on me right
back behind you.
Oh, hello, praise the Lord.
We've all had that teacher, right? Like losing their mind on the class, and then an admin walks in or something. I love Medea, right? So funny. I love Medea. I love Medea, but I feel like every teacher's been guilty of this at some point, right? Where they're like going off on their class, they've like had enough, and they're just losing it. And then an administrator walks in, you're like, oh, hello. Yes, we're great in here. Sunshine and roses. So your grandma thinks you're an angel. Good. Keep it up. So any of you saw this? Any of you ever had a teacher going off a little bit, and then all of a sudden their demeanor changes and you notice there's an admin or somebody in the room? You're like, why are you being so nice? Like, wait a minute. Did you switch personalities? Like, but you're like, I know the one. She was the worst. And again, all teachers have their moments. This is a permanent state of things. I think most of the time I'm in a pretty good mood, but we've all had our moments, right? Where we just get pushed and we, yeah, you don't accuse unless you got evidence. If you got evidence, accuse. But if you don't have evidence, yeah. So welcome, everybody. We're just getting started. We're just chatting. So I was just showing this funny reel that I found that I thought was relatable for students and for teachers. So I'll share it one more time since people are joining, then we'll get into it.
Camera on you, baby.
There's a camera on me right
back behind you.
Oh, hello, praise the Lord. I'm gonna bust you inside your head. What?
There's a camera on you, baby.
There's a camera on me right
back behind you.
Oh, hello, praise the Lord.
So yeah, all been guilty of that. All been guilty of that for sure. So I thought it was funny. All right, let's get on topic. All right, for this week, make sure that you're checking that lesson and recording page. Okay, each week it's going to have the playbacks from class and kind of tell you what we're doing, what's due, what's past due. So if you ever miss class or anything like that, then that's a great reference for you. Okay, so we are on week 12. Holy cow, we only have 8 weeks left of school. And this week we are doing cancel culture. Okay, cancel culture. So today I want to spend a few minutes, like 10 minutes. I got a 3-minute video. We'll discuss. So I hope you'll participate. We'll talk just a little bit about the history of freedom of speech, because freedom of speech, you actually have to define that, right? Every country has a different definition of freedom of speech. So I thought it'd be good for us to kind of define what is the history and how do we define freedom of speech traditionally and legally in this country, and then start to get into kind of the cancel culture debate. Is it necessary and we've seen good change from it, or has it gone too far and does it infringe on free speech? And so kind of, that debate a little bit and getting into more of a modern take on it that we're seeing as well. All right. So we're going to be on week 12. All right. We're going to go into the free speech. So I don't have a video sheet for you this time, just some questions that we're going to answer, and we can even answer these together when it's done. So we'll watch the video. Okay, so a quick just rundown on the history of freedom of speech. Keep an ear out, though, for what amendment of the Constitution grants freedom of speech. Prior to what year was there no Supreme Court cases on the freedom of speech or kind of clarifying freedom of speech? What are some examples to the limits of free speech that have been set up by the Supreme Court, by Supreme Court rulings in the last 100 years? Name 3. And then what are 2 major limits to freedom of speech in the US? Okay, so what are 2 major limits that we see in freedom of speech to the US? All right, so here we go. So kind of keep these questions in mind. You are going to submit it. Either you can put it on a Google Doc and submit it, or you can just submit, enter your text there on the assignment. All right, but let's watch this and then we'll discuss them.
Freedom of speech. The Founding Fathers named the first 10 amendments to the Constitution the Bill of Rights, the first of which guarantees some of the most fundamental freedoms of our country, including freedoms of press, protest, religion, assembly, and last but certainly not least, freedom of speech. The definition of free speech and its limits, such as censorship and hate speech, have been debated since the initial adoption of the First Amendment. Freedom of speech is considered a fundamental building block of liberty, allowing citizens to express their ideas and bring about the change that reflects the needs of the people. It also gives a voice to sometimes conflicting or dissenting opinions, which is believed to inspire the healthy debate that moves society forward. When drafting the First Amendment, James Madison and his colleagues drew from many of the great thinkers of the day. One of the most influential works in colonial America at the time was a collection of essays known as Cato's Letters. The writers were two British men, John Trenchard and Thomas Gordon, who wrote under the pseudonym Cato. Cato was one of Julius Caesar's chief opponents in the Roman Senate, known for his incorruptibility and defense of the Republic. They published 144 essays promoting liberty and criticizing the overreach of the English crown. In one essay, they wrote, "Freedom of speech is the great bulwark of liberty. They prosper and die together." This idea and others from the letters inspired much of the Constitution and Bill of Rights. From Madison's own notes, we know that he intended freedom of speech to be a natural right, not something granted by the government. Of course, free speech is not an unlimited right. And because the First Amendment doesn't establish what those limits are, we've spent centuries debating what is and what isn't free speech, a debate allowed by our right to free speech. The recent history of free speech can be traced through a long and winding path of landmark Supreme Court cases, so just strap in for a minute. Prior to World War I, the Supreme Court had virtually never ruled on cases on the freedom of speech and had done little to protect dissenting voices. Then, in 1919, the court decided in Schenck v. United States that the government was allowed to limit speech that would create a clear and present danger. In 1942, again in a time of war, the court limited protection for fighting words, speech that can provoke harm to another, in the case of Chaplinsky v. New Hampshire. The year after, however, in West Virginia v. Barnett, the court determined that making students recite the Pledge of Allegiance violated their free speech rights. In 1989, flag burning was ruled as protected free speech in Texas v. Johnson, as was cross burning in 2003's Virginia v. Black, unless it's being done to intimidate. So yes, free speech is certainly not a simple issue.
So this part covers the last part. So limitations on it. Sorry, it was going fast and I was trying to throw things in the chat and I couldn't keep up. I gotta type faster. And then when I type fast, I make errors. Okay, so I listed some of those. So limitations, words causing a clear threat. So words causing a clear threat or danger. So these are limits, right? And then fighting words, I will kill you, or I will hit you, or I will, those are limits, right? So we see protections in the freedom of the speech. You can't be forced, like within school, you can't be forced to say the Pledge of Allegiance. It is legal to burn the flag and stuff. So is it patriotic? No. Do people like it? Most of the time not, but people can do that. Same with burning crosses. That could be really offensive to religious people, but it is not against the law in order to burn a cross, as long as it's not done in a threatening way, like to intimidate someone. But words causing clear threat or harm can be limited, and also fighting words, the threat of I'll kill you, can't threaten to kill somebody or to harm somebody, are some of those limitations. Okay, so if we go back, is that pretty much, I think that's the end of the video. Let me just see if, I don't think there's anything else really.
But it's one worth debating over, as it remains the cornerstone of American democracy.
Okay, yeah, that was the end of the video. So if we're looking at our questions, okay, so what amendment of the Constitution grants freedom of speech? All right, who can remind us? What was the, and these are things you can either answer directly in the submission box, or you can throw these on a Google Doc if you want. So what amendment clearly outlines or states freedom of speech is a guarantee in the Constitution? Anybody? What amendment? Good. Yes, the First Amendment. Okay. So Bill of Rights is the First Amendment to the Constitution, and it's in the very First Amendment. Okay. So to say it's important or the cornerstone is absolutely an understatement, right? It is the cornerstone of our democracy and one of the most important things that was trying to set us apart from England when the founders, you know, were constructing the Constitution. Prior to what year were there basically no Supreme Court cases clarifying or challenging freedom of speech? Because I can say whatever I want. Yes, 1918, so World War I. So prior to World War I, 1918, there were really no cases that helped to clarify what does that actually mean and what are the limits on that, right? Because also within society, we have rules, right? Think in school, there's rules, there's dress codes, there's this and that, there are rules. It's so we don't live in a lawless society. We have quite a few laws. So where does freedom of speech or freedom of action end and limitation begin? You know, and prior to 1918, there was a lot of question, you know, a lot of specific cases like, you know, well, can you, if you have freedom of speech, let's be honest, freedom of speech is only really needed when you disagree with the mainstream, right? When you agree with the mainstream, everybody gets along. When freedom of speech becomes important is when you don't agree with the mainstream or the government or the popular or whatever is going on. You know, that's when freedom of speech becomes, actually, do I have freedom or am I being forced to do something? So like the Pledge of Allegiance or burning a flag or something like that. Those saying the pledge or having the flag, those are symbolisms of patriotism, right? Which I think a lot of people support. But what if you don't feel that way? Does your freedom of speech end there? Well, then is it really freedom? Are you really free if you're forced to agree with your government or forced to support something that you don't agree with, right? And so it calls kind of those things into question. So what are some examples of limitations or guidelines that they've set? So I think I listed a bunch on that there can be limits. That was the first kind of decision, 1919, during times of war, that speech is limited. So we see during like World War I, World War II, we see during the Cold War, Vietnam War, where you're not allowed to speak out against the government. So at times of total war, when we are fully involved in a war, they can limit speech and stuff. So that is a time where we are more limited. You can't be forced, though, to say the Pledge of Allegiance. So that is not a limit on speech. You can protest, you know, by not saying the pledge. Or we see more recently, right, people kneeling for the pledge or kneeling for the national anthem at like sporting events and things like that. You can burn a flag. This was super controversial back in the day and stuff. But yes, you can do that. That's the right of speech. And then on burning of a cross, which a lot of the founders or majority religion in the country from the founding was Christianity. So the cross is a symbol of that. So again, very controversial. A lot of people would find offensive, but that doesn't mean you don't, just because it's offensive doesn't mean I don't have the right to do it, you know? Yes. So during times of war, now, it's different when, let's say, like right now, like we're giving aid in the Ukrainian war or Israeli war, or we've given support to Taiwan and stuff like that. So when we're supporting other countries militarily, not necessarily limiting, but when we're in full out war, like our country is officially declared war on another country, yes, they can limit through media outlets and things like that. Criticisms of, or no, it doesn't mean you can't say, I don't agree, but you're not going to be able to protest as loudly or do as many vocal expressions of that during times of total war. Like I said, World War I, World War II, Vietnam War, during the Cold War, we saw more censorship or limits on that. Yes. So it gets a little dicey, and we haven't been at total war for quite a while. So we haven't seen that implemented in a while and stuff, but those are things that they can limit. All right, so if you haven't, make sure that you are limiting. You can list these things. I don't need complete sentences, just number them. and stuff. And you can use, we put them there in the chat. We're discussing, you can use for those questions. Second part, really quick, I want to take a few minutes and look at is this New York Times article on free speech is really interesting. And there's a survey that they have you take. So, and it's basically, it's saying that it feels that cancel culture or freedom of speech has been limited and it's gone kind of too far. But they have this really interesting poll that I came across, okay? And we could kind of do this together and just kind of see what you think. Over the past year, have you held your tongue because you were concerned about retaliation or harsh criticism? Give me a thumbs up if you at all in the last year have felt that you couldn't say something in a certain circumstance. It could be in class, it could be around people, it could be around relatives or something like that. Give me a thumbs down if you're like, nope, I think it, I say it. I can't stop talking. So have you had it after the fact? You're like, oh, I probably shouldn't have said that. I do talk a lot too, Cielo, so I have been in that position before where I was like, oh, I probably shouldn't have said that. Okay, I'm going to answer yes to this. This was really shocking to me. I personally have felt this way professionally. As a teacher, there's just been so much changes. This is my 14th year, and I would be lying if I said that I used to feel like I could say within reason. I mean, for sure, always like we have to be censored in the workplace. Like I can't just say anything I want. But I will be honest, in the last couple of years, I have felt like I have to be a lot more careful the way I say things, how I say things, quote, to not offend people, even if that's not my goal is to offend anybody, just because we might disagree. And so when I took this, I answered yes, and I meant it. So this was interesting. So overall, 55% of people in the last year have felt like they had to hold their tongue for not just fear of someone disagreeing, but retaliation or harsh criticism. And I'll be honest, I saw retaliation even within teaching, even within my own department in the last year of a teacher that the majority of teachers didn't agree with. Did the person do something wrong? No. Did I agree with them? No. They had an unpopular opinion. But I saw how everybody went after them. And I'll be honest, I thought personally that it was pretty awful how they went after them. Okay, we don't agree with them, but that doesn't mean we have the right to go after them. And they tried to get them in trouble. And they didn't, fortunately, because it was part of their freedom of speech. But it's sad that we have to think that way. Over the past year, have you retaliated against or been harshly criticized another person because of something he or she has said? If we're being honest, this goes both ways, right? I'm sure there have been times when someone has said something that I don't agree with, where I probably didn't have the most kind reaction or the best way of saying it, right? I can't think of a time maybe where it was my intention to be harsh, but I'm sure, because things are just so divisive right now. And I can definitely think of, so yes, yeah, family, we can be a little bit more, and for sure with family, sometimes we are a little bit more blunt, we feel a bit saber. So I'm going to say yes, but look at this. It's interesting. So a lot of people are saying no, but people are, doing that. And I think it's interesting. They even break it down by party. People older, younger. Interesting, the highest group was younger, 18 to 34. Ages 18 to 34 had the highest percent of possibly maybe being a bit harsh in their response or possibly offending somebody the way they did it. How much of a problem is it that Americans do not exercise their freedom of speech in everyday situations out of fear of retaliation or harsh criticism? I think it's somewhat serious. It can be very serious, but again, this could vary how people feel. And stuff like that. But here's what's interesting. Majority of people, 84%, say it's somewhat serious to very serious. So most people are acknowledging this is a problem. So at least some acknowledge it from both sides, Democrats and Republicans, liberals and conservatives, young and old. See, 18 to 34 plus 65 and over, men and women. Everyone is kind of acknowledging we're in territory that's scary a little bit, how we might be infringing on freedom of speech, that just because my feelings get hurt I all of a sudden want to shut somebody else down. And here's the reality: just because your feelings get hurt does not mean that person is wrong. Now, it doesn't mean you have to agree with them, but what I mean by wrong is I mean that doesn't mean that it's hate speech. Just because it hurts your feelings doesn't mean it's hate speech. Just because I say I don't agree with your involvement in that, or I don't believe in that religion. A lot of people will now take that as, you don't like me, you hate me, you attacked me. When did they actually attack you, or did they disagree with you? And that's a big thing that's changed. We used to see the ability to, I don't like that religion, I don't like that movement, I don't agree with that, I don't want to be a part of that. And people are like, fine, don't. You do you, I'll do me. But now if I don't endorse or support whatever it is that someone else is involved in, right, all of a sudden it's not, I disagree with you, it's you hate me. It's like, no, I just don't want to be a part of what you're doing. You go do you, I'll do me. That's all right. Do you guys kind of get what I'm saying? And so I do think, and that is where I am going to put a little bit of heat on the younger generation. And maybe you guys see this a little bit, where the younger generation is very quick to be like, that's hate speech. And I'm like, that's not hate speech. That's saying, I don't want to be a part of that. I don't agree with that. I am not interested in that. That is not part of my moral compass or what I believe in. That doesn't mean I hate you. It means I don't want to hang out with you. You know what I mean? Yes, the middle schoolers, but even the 20 somethings, it is, people are pretty quick to that. And believe me, oh yeah. And you're like, no, just because I don't agree with what you're doing, or you could even go as far as, I think what you're doing is stupid. Like, just because I think that what you're doing is, like, just go do your math homework, right? Go do your math homework. That doesn't mean it's hate speech. Hate speech is, I hate you. I want you to die. I think you shouldn't have been born. Like, that's hate speech. Hate speech is when you believe that someone doesn't have the right to exist. Do you see what I mean? And there is a difference. There really is a difference, but I feel like we've blurred that line a little bit. So I thought that was interesting. Was there any others? I think that was it. I think that was kind of it. Oh, here's one. Do you feel more free or less free than you did to share your point of view 10 years ago? So obviously you guys probably wouldn't have an opinion on that because you were like 7 or 8, you know what I mean? Me though, I'm 40. I would definitely say less free. I really would. I feel like people are so quick to be offended now, and people who, again, disagree, it is now categorized as hate, or you're against me, or you're attacking me. It's like, no, I don't agree. I'm not interested in what you're doing. I don't see the world that way. But that doesn't mean I hate you. It's just, I don't want to be a part of that, And so I personally, if I'm being honest, I definitely feel that way. Do you feel more or less free as you did to express your view? Wasn't that? Oh, on politics. That one was on politics. On race relations. This one is a really hard one too. It's really interesting. I grew up in the night. I'm 40. Yep, I'm 40. There, it's out. So lies. Well, I hope that's a good thing. I hope you don't think I look 50, because then I'm gonna cry. You guys can debate if Miss Hall is too sensitive. She took it as hate speech. Okay, that's funny. Come on now. That's pretty funny. Oh, you're very sweet. Aw, you are so sweet. Thank you. Thank you. I'll take it. Yep, I'm 40. They do say millennials are aging much better, so I will go millennials. No. So thank you. This one's really interesting. This one on race relations. And because growing up, when I was in school, it wasn't a thing. Like, we didn't really talk about race. And I don't know if that was me. We talked about it, it wasn't like, but I went to school with people of all backgrounds, and it was just, I don't know. It wasn't talked about the way it is now. And so that's, I think, what's been an adjustment for me in the last 10 years, where now it feels like so much is about race. Where at least growing up in my teens and my 20s, when I was in college and all that kind of stuff, I had friends of all backgrounds and hung out with people of all backgrounds, and it just wasn't something, nobody really talked about it. We all just did our thing. So I don't know. This one's interesting. And I'm sure people have different experiences, maybe feel differently about that and stuff. But for me, yeah, I feel like race has definitely become a much bigger topic in the last 5 years, than it was when I was growing up. 90s, early 2000s, it was just, I don't know, interesting and stuff. Okay. So the goal of this was just to start getting us thinking about free speech and how we kind of view that, okay, and stuff. So the goal is to get this in today, all right? And then I wanted to go ahead and at least watch 1 or 2 of the intro videos on cancel culture. I'll be honest, I really tried to find like good sources to show both sides as best I could. So I really, this one, I thought this would actually be easier to find sources, and I actually found it harder to find balanced sources, I'll be honest, on this topic. So this one, I did a lot of research, but felt like I didn't have as many sources as usually. Like I can find plenty for both sides. And this one was a little bit more work. So you'll see there's not as many sources as normal, but that's why I was trying to find like decent sources, that weren't just blatantly one way or the other, trying to have an objective point for however they were approaching it. Okay, so the way that we're going to approach this topic is cancel culture, which you could kind of call the modern day trend, right, of limiting speech or censoring speech. So look at, is it necessary and we've seen benefits from it, or has it gone too far and it limits free speech? So those are kind of the lanes to kind of consider. All right. So if you want to go ahead, you can get your worksheet open. And you can find that here on the lesson recording page. So get that open, make a copy. And then we can at least get through number 1. And then that way you'll have lots of time on tomorrow. We can discuss a little bit. We can do a recap and then give you time to go through the sources and pick your side, because this can be hard. Maybe you've seen benefits from cancel culture. Maybe there's movements or things that you were like, absolutely, and I think it has a purpose. Or maybe you feel like it's gone too far. I think that either way, this is a topic not just to jump onto. I think there's a lot of gray, and it takes a lot of consideration when going into it, right? And stuff, because there is always 2 sides to an argument. Okay, so let's watch these intro videos real quick, and you can start filling out number 1. Any questions before we get started? Doing okay? All right. All right, so an explanation, like what is cancel culture, and helping us kind of give some actual definition to it, and making sure we're kind of all on the same page when we're using the term.
It seems innocent at the time, a simple comment or post on social media or a picture you post.
But in today's culture, just a simple social media post from years ago can prevent you from getting a job. Is that fair?
Tonight, Denver 7's Russell Haythorne goes 360 on the rise of what's being referred to as cancel culture.
You may have never heard the term cancel culture.
It's somewhat of a boycott of a person.
But you certainly know some of the faces who have been canceled.
I think social media does play a big part in it.
Let's start with some context.
Usually it's a public figure or a celebrity who has done something that other people find objectionable.
It can also be someone just like you and me.
Putting something out there that can probably offend somebody.
So I often caution people, especially young people, students, about what they place on social media, because that is their professional image and picture forever.
Cancel culture is a form of boycott or public shaming of a person who has shared a questionable or unpopular opinion, or in more serious cases, someone whose behavior in their past is not only offensive, but unethical, illegal, and wrong. Like R. Kelly, Harvey Weinstein, who's currently on trial, and Bill Cosby.
And he's in prison and appropriately has been held accountable. We absolutely should hold people accountable for bad behavior.
That really ruined their image for me.
I have canceled on people. I've spoken out a lot about R. Kelly.
Those cases, and others like them, even gave rise to the Me Too movement.
Women who are not listened to, who were not validated in their concerns, getting together and finding a way to hold their abusers accountable.
Truth be told, it's deeply connected to social justice. Powerless people finally being heard and taking that power back.
Cancel culture can also be found closer to home.
People, including our employers, including our friends and family, are going to hold us accountable for what we post on social media.
Amari Dantzler has canceled people.
Friends, yes.
So has Jazz Moore.
Some of my friends, or I don't hang out with as much.
Rude to be like to post ignorant things about other people.
I try to talk to them and explain why their behavior isn't cool before I just cancel them.
After a while, when it kicks in, they get all huggy-buggy.
And while that may be justified, there's also a cautionary tale there. While cancel culture started out as justice, it can involve people being too quick to judge, even considered bullying, extreme mobs with vicious online attacks without context or the full story. Even former President Barack Obama has warned of this.
That's not activism. That's not bringing about change. You know, if all you're doing is casting stones, you're probably not going to get that far.
There are more benign cases of cancel culture as well.
So he was stretching the truth a little bit.
Like Brian Williams at NBC, demoted for embellishing on past experiences in wartime reporting and elsewhere.
It came to the point where he was considered damaged goods.
Stripped of his main anchor role at NBC and demoted to MSNBC. Not canceled entirely, but muted significantly.
It can make or break careers.
Like what happened to NFL quarterback Colin Kaepernick, who refused to stand for the national anthem.
He was protesting something in a way that he understood to be respectful. The fact that he's one of the top players today in football and cannot have work, I mean, that is cancellation.
And that's where experts say, be careful.
If you post anything, it's a record, right? It's a public record.
It's really hard to forgive and forget.
Because even though America loves a comeback, in this digital age, your past can come back to haunt you.
Sometimes partying and everything, all like that, it doesn't need to be online.
Anybody can look up your name, and people do. Employers do that.
Do we even have private lives anymore? Increasingly, the answer to that is no.
Russell Haythorne, Denver 7.
All right, so what do you think? We want to hear from you. Email us 360@thedenverchannel.com.
So it gives a little bit of the history of the rise of what we're calling cancel culture now. A lot of it actually rooted out of the Me Too movement. So the women's movement of acknowledgement of abuse or sexual abuse or, different kinds of abuse and being ignored for so many years. So we really see kind of the Me Too movement, cancel culture, kind of the term that we use, to cancel or to get rid of, kind of coming from that movement. And so that's where it kind of gained momentum. And so, and I think there's a lot of agreement on the big celebrities that have been brought down, Harvey Weinstein, Bill Cosby, R. Kelly. I always forget his name, the guy from That 70s Show or The Ranch that was just recently convicted of rape in California and got like 30 years in prison. There's quite a few examples of that where people weren't believed at first and this and that. And so the need to kind of massively go after these people to bring accountability, because when you're a high level celebrity, you tend to get away with things that other people, I think it is the Kushner guy. Are you talking about the actor? Or are you talking about somebody else? Yeah, I think so. I see him in my head right now. I used to watch The Ranch. So when he died off the show, I was like, what happened? So,
was it the one that, who was with Jackie, right? The one who's married to the actor Jackie right now? Because that's Ashton Kutcher.
Oh, no, it's not Ashton Kutcher. No, it's not Ashton Kutcher. So they got in trouble. Ashton Kutcher and his wife, worked with him on That 70s Show. No, it's the other guy. Let me find a picture now. I gotta find a picture. Let me see.
The clown-looking guy? The one with the fluffy hair?
I think so. Okay, so let me see. The Ranch, convicted of rape, 70s Show. What's his name? Danny Masterson. Danny Masterson. Here he is. That's him. I'm sure there's been others, but that's the one he was like on you guys recognize him, like That 70s Show. He was on The Ranch with Kutcher, actually. He was on both shows with them. He was there were rumors for years in Hollywood, 3 women accused him, weren't taken seriously, and then he was charged and found guilty and is now going to spend a good chunk of the rest of his life in prison. Hyde, I haven't seen that one. Was he on that show? Okay. Oh, okay. Oh, that was his name. Okay. Yeah, I never watched that 70s show that much, but I love The Ranch on Netflix. I thought it was so funny. And so when he died off, and I was like, why'd they kill him? Because he was like the brother of Ashton Kutcher on the show. And then because I didn't realize all this stuff that was pending against him and stuff like that. So interesting kind of background on that, right? You know, interesting sort of background of, you know, where cancel culture is coming from and how it gained momentum and support. Okay. We don't have time today for the other one, like how it works. So we'll watch that a little bit. We'll finish kind of discussing. And then there's some good sources for the pro con. And then I found lots of videos. There weren't a lot of articles were opinions, very specific to like certain events or certain people. And so but I found quite a few videos or reports on like the total kind of the view in general of it, okay, which is the approach we want to take. I think we can all agree there are specific cases where like certain people like R. Kelly or something, like absolutely they should be canceled. By canceled, I mean goodbye, get out of here. You know what I mean? So I think there's extreme cases where it's pretty easy to say, yeah, you should be around here or something. But looking at the general of what it's morphed into, have we gone too far? And kind of looking at that a little bit closer. Okay. So we'll stop here for today. All right. Please get in those couple questions on the intro video, freedom of speech, get those in. And then we'll work on this more tomorrow. Okay. And I'll give you lots of time in class. All right. Have a wonderful day and I will see you tomorrow. All right. Thank you. Bye. I'll see you all tomorrow. Thank you.